he took a real risk over the objection of almost every one of his advisors to invite Begin and Sadat and their team to the presidential retreat at Camp David, by the way, at Rosalind's suggestion, to have this rustic retreat separated from the press and isolated. And he was such a knowledgeable interlocutor, a mediator. And he did so many personal touches. So personal touch number one was having a Shabbat dinner, fully kosher, at Camp David. They koshered the kitchen, and he stayed for the full Shabbat dinner. And Begin was very touched by that. Then the next Sunday, 2 days later, he took Sadat and Begin to Gettysburg, to the Gettysburg battlefield, to symbolically say enough wars. And Sadat, who had been a general and did some of his training in the United States, knew all the mistakes that the Confederates made at Gettysburg, which was a little embarrassing, like Pickett's last charge, which was a little embarrassing for Carter as a Southerner. But for Begin, who was not a military man, he was a student of Abraham Lincoln. And on the spot, Nadine, with no notes, he gave the Gettysburg Address. So this helped break the ice. Notwithstanding that, Jimmy Carter negotiated and wrote personally, I'm saying personally, 22 peace agreements in that 13-day period, and went from one cabin to another, Sadat's to Begin's. When he couldn't deal with Begin successfully, he went to Diane, the foreign minister, and Asa Weitzman, the defense minister, in particular, to Aharon Barak, who's still very much alive, became the Supreme Court justice. He was the legal advisor, and he personally negotiated Camp David. But here again is where knowledge and personal involvement come into effect. We were now at the 13th and last day. Carter had to get back. He couldn't stay forever away from the Oval Office. And Begin came to see him and said, "Mr. President, I'm sorry, I can't make any more compromises. Please get me a limousine to take me to Andrews Air Force Base. I've got an El Al plane waiting. I'm sorry, we're close, but it didn't work." And Carter could see Sadat's whole historic mission collapsing and going home with empty-handed and possibly facing assassination, which happened later. He could see his whole presidency going down the drain, having put so much energy into it. And here again, doing your homework and personal connections make a difference in diplomacy. He knew from the CIA profile of Begin that he loved his 8 grandchildren. He got Susan Clow, his personal secretary, to give him the names of those 8 grandchildren. And then he made 8 copies of the original photos that were made when Begin and Sadat came to Camp David, the 3 of them, and wrote personally to each of the 8 grandchildren with hope for peace, Jimmy Carter, and then delivered it to Begin's cabin at Camp David as he had his luggage literally waiting to leave. And he could see Begin's eyes water and his lips quiver as he read the names of each of his grandchildren. He put his suitcase down and he said, "Mr. President, I'll make one last try." And that's how Camp David was finally consummated.